Assalamu alaikum. Sunnah followers, in association with Aris Institute, will be holding a much needed and beneficial presentation presented by Dr. Ali Shehata. Do not despair. A message from the Quran regarding Gaza, live at Masjid Noor. Join us this Saturday, March 9th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, streaming live simultaneously from Sunnah Followers online to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, DLive, LinkedIn, Twitch, Trovo, Rumble, Odyssey, and Mixcloud. See you there, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Sunnah followers in association with Aris Institute will be holding a special Ramadan workshop presented by Dr. Ali Shehata this Sunday, March 10th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The topics that will be covered are how to get the most out of this month, rulings specific to women, sickness and medication this month, what does not break the fast, what is best to do in Ramadan, and much, much more. Streaming live simultaneously from Sunnah Followers online to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, DLive, LinkedIn, Twitch, Trovo, Rumble, Odyssey, X. Assalamu alaikum. Please mark your calendars. Starting this Friday, March 1st, we will be replacing the 6 p.m. Eastern Aqidah class, Al-Wala Wal-Bara class, with a special program for the month of Ramadan. Please join Ustada Lailanasheeba for the first 7 days of Ramadan with a preparation course. Allow her to walk you every day after that with the fiqh of fasting. Don't forget, mark your calendars, and we're streaming it right here on Sunnah Followers. Assalamu alaikum. Sunnah followers in association with Aris Institute will be holding a much needed and beneficial presentation presented by Dr. Ali Shehata. Do not despair. A message from the Quran regarding Gaza, live at Masjid Noor. Join us this Saturday, March 9th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, streaming live simultaneously from Sunnah Followers online to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, DLive, LinkedIn, Twitch, Trovo, Rumble, Odyssey, and Mixcloud. See you there, inshallah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. So this program that I've prepared is it is due to the fact that there are so many people right now that are feeling a lot of despair about what's happening, and I don't blame them. I feel the same way myself sometimes, but I wanted to address this issue specifically, and by helping us, inshallah, as we get prepared for Ramadan to go back to the Quran. So the Ramadan is the month of the Quran, and let us, inshallah, start to benefit from it immediately. So before we begin, inshallah, I'd like to give a few acknowledgements. First of all, I'd like to thank Allah Azza wa Jal for giving us the guidance that He has given to us. And this is the ultimate blessing for us to be Muslim. And secondly, to give us the blessing of the Quran, this amazing book that brings calm and tranquility to us in such difficult times. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah ala ni'ami. We praise Allah Azza wa Jalla, and we thank Him for His blessings, that which we know and that which we don't are not aware of. I would also like to thank Aris University for hosting this program online, and Masjid Noor for hosting it live. Jazakumullahu khair. And I apologize for the late start. I was actually teaching the intensive course for Aris just before this, and we tried to finish up our sessions for this morning. So my apologies for the slightly late start. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, Sunnahfollowers, UNLV, MSA, Masjid al-Rahman, Aurora, Colorado, and Young Muslims of Las Vegas, and anyone else who's listening from the Young Muslims group around the country. We ask Allah to reward all of you. And we also honor our brothers and sisters in Palestine for standing patiently in the face of the adversity that they're going through, standing in this difficulty for truth and for freedom, and being an inspiration to all of us. So to begin with, if we do not turn to the Quran in moments of difficulty, then when are we going to turn to the Quran? The reason I wanted to talk about this specific topic is because I know, again, that a lot of us are feeling a lot of, maybe we might say, compassion fatigue, seeing these horrific images every single day. A lot of people just can't take it. I've heard it from many people. They say, I can't think about this anymore. I can't see this anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's too much. And as a result of that, because of the just kind of the mind-numbing images coming out, a lot of people don't want to think about it. They want to put it out of their minds. It's hard. It's really hard to see this every single day. It's hard to think that in the modern day, and with all of the news coverage, with all of the images, with all of the video, that the world has so little humanity, that we can, like, the entire world can literally watch the slaughter of an entire nation that's videotaped, that's photographed in great detail, and nobody stands up to do anything. It's really, really hard. And so as a result, sometimes we just kind of give up. A lot of people just give up, and a lot of people lose faith, and a lot of people they distance themselves from the issue altogether. And we can't do that before Ramadan. This is the most important thing that we can do for our brothers and sisters in Ramadan, is we can make dua for them, make sincere dua for them, that Allah will give them the steadfastness to hold firm, despite these challenges. And that's why I wanted to remind you, at the doorstep of Ramadan being just around the corner, that we can't stop thinking about these people. They're going through so much. The least we can do is remember them in our dua. The least that we can do is to ask Allah to relieve them, to give them success, to bless them, just to be with them, even in nothing else but our dua. You have to remember that dua, it has a very, very powerful effect in Ramadan. Dua is one of those very special things that we have in Ramadan. Talib, could you drop this, just so that if their sisters come, they can. Okay. Oh, okay. So we can't abandon them, okay? Because our dua is so very powerful in Ramadan, and the gathering of thousands of Muslims in the masajid every single night, reciting the words of Allah after having broken their fast, this dua will have a huge impact on their condition. So that's why I wanted to remind us, to give us a little bit of hope, to give us a little bit of inspiration, inshallah, so that we don't forget them in Ramadan. And I hope, inshallah, that you may gain a new perspective on this whole situation. And I put this scientific paper up to remind you that the effect of the Quran, the recitation of the Quran and listening to the Quran, so reciting it yourself or listening to the recitation, it has a proven, clinical, documented effect on reducing anxiety, reducing stress, and reducing depression. That is what we have to turn to in this time. We have to turn back to the Quran. So, to begin with, what is the value of going to the Quran and looking at the stories that it tells? Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us in Surah Yusuf, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِم مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْقُرَىٰ أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَيَنظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِهِمْ وَلَدَارُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِّلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ حَتَّىٰ إِذَا اسْتَيْأَسَ الرُّسُلُ وَظَنُّوا أنهم قد كذبوا جاءهم نصرنا فنجي من نشاء ولا يرد بأسنا عن القوم المجرمين لقد كان في قصصهم عبرة لأولي الألباب ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون. So the translation of the meaning, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tells us in Surah number 12, Surah Yusuf, at the end of the Surah, after He shared this beautiful story of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam and his family. He said, we only sent before you men that were inspired from among the people of each society. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He inspired men from all of these different communities to be prophets. Have they not traveled through the land to see what was the end of those destroyed before them? And surely the eternal home of the hereafter is far better for those with taqwa. Will you not then understand? And when the messengers despaired and thought they had been denied help, our help came to them in the end. We then saved whomever we willed, and our punishment is never diverted from the wicked. In their stories, there is truly a lesson for people of understanding. This message cannot be a fabrication. Rather, it confirms the previous revelations. It is a detailed explanation of all things, a guide, and a mercy for people of faith. So this is the end of Surah Yusuf. So some points that we can consider, some take-home points we can benefit from here, is that history repeats itself. Okay? So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He asks us the question, what was the end of those destroyed before them? Have we not traveled throughout the earth to see? So when we travel, one of the reflections that Allah instructs us to have is to look at the previous nations, to look at these nations, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, as an example. The immense power that they had, the technology that they had, things that we don't even understand. So we look at like the Egyptian civilization, for example, there's things till now that nobody understands. How did they do those things? How is it possible for them to do it? We can't understand it without the help of modern technology. And even with modern technology, it's quite difficult. So how did they do it? We don't know. But what was the end of those civilizations? They all came to the same end. They were all destroyed. All of them were destroyed. So when we look at that, that has to give us a reminder that history is repeating itself. The same thing happens. Nations rise, they disobey, they become arrogant, they become ruthless, and then they're destroyed. So the home of the hereafter, therefore, is far better for those with taqwa. So I always like to remind you what the word taqwa means. A lot of times I ask people, what is taqwa? A lot of times they don't, they say, well, it is to fear Allah. Not exactly. Okay. There is the common usage now, the kind of the defanged word, I think was a better word, to call it God consciousness. We don't want to offend anybody. Talk about the word fear. God forbid we should talk about fear. So we say God consciousness. But the word taqwa, what it actually means, it means to obey Allah with the intention of protecting yourself from His punishments. To obey Allah with the intention of protecting yourself from His punishments. Okay. Now, a person can obey Allah for many reasons, right? So you can obey Allah out of gratitude. Okay, so you say, Allah has been so good to me. He has blessed me with so much. How dare I disobey Him? I'm going to obey Him out of my gratitude. Okay, and this is called shukr. This is how we practice gratitude, by obeying Allah with a sense of gratitude. Can a person obey Allah to protect himself from His punishment and to be thankful? Of course you can. You can do multiple. And that is the goal. The goal is that we obey Allah, seeking His reward, protecting ourselves from His punishment, and obeying Him simply because He deserves to be obeyed. All of that can be possible. And so this, going back to taqwa then, why does Allah mention taqwa more than shukr, for example, in the Quran? What do you guys think? I'm going to pick on you guys since you're here.
Rather, because maybe not everyone, if someone isn't as blessed as someone else, they might like not.
But we all have blessings, as Allah said in the Quran, وَتَعُدُّ نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا, which applies to everybody. If you were to count the blessings of Allah, you wouldn't be able to. But remember that Allah is our creator. And He, as is our creator, He knows what we're all about. He knows how we work, how we function. And He also knows that the most impactful thing for us is to avoid fear. Avoid that which we fear. So generally, when we're talking about the motivation of the human being, it generally comes down to carrot and stick. Okay? That you run after the reward or you escape the punishment. That's generally what the human being is about. Okay? The carrot, okay, that you try to get the reward, try to get that reward, or the stick, you avoid the getting beat. Okay? Which one is more powerful for the human being? The stick, by far. Okay. And so Allah, because He created us and He knows our makeup, He knows what motivates us. He told us about that way. So if Allah talked about you should obey me because of the reward, because of the carrot, because you're going to get this, you're going to get this, people will say, that's not enough, and they'll go to sleep. But if you talk about the punishment, people say, I don't want to go through that. I don't want pain. I'll do whatever it takes to avoid the pain. And that's why taqwa is so frequently mentioned. Okay? Everybody wants to protect themselves from pain. Exactly what that. Thank you. So that's the concept that's happening here. So Allah is really, He brings up taqwa for that reason. And again, this is a sign of the fact that He is our creator. So the home of the hereafter is far better for those with taqwa. Allah tells us in Surah Yusuf that at the end of the day, no matter what you see from this dunya, what you see of reward and what you see of luxury and what you see of possessions that people have, I want you to remember the statement of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that if this dunya, it mattered more to Allah than the wings of a mosquito, that Allah would not even allow the disbeliever a drink of water. Okay, what's the value of the wings of a mosquito? What can I trade that for? Anybody willing to trade me something for wings of a mosquito? Has no value at all. Zero. Okay. And so the Prophet is saying, if this dunya was worth less than that, okay, not even worth that much, worth less than that, okay, then Allah would not even give them a drink of water. Remember the Arabic word, dunya, comes from the Arabic word dana, to be low, to be base, to be insignificant, to be worthless. Okay. So we are fighting one another and killing one another, literally, in order to get from this dunya when it's not even worth anything. When you compare the reward, the luxury of the hereafter to the luxury here, there is no comparison. Okay, Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, if you compare the two, they're only similar in name. They're only similar in name. So the food of the hereafter, it's food, okay? And it's food like what we have here, but only in name. in terms of everything else, in terms of the taste, in terms of the enjoyment, in terms of all of the good that comes with it, there is absolutely no comparison. So Allah reminds us repeatedly, don't fight for this. Don't worry about this. This is insignificant. Set your sights for something higher. Ulu al-himma, okay, to have higher aspirations. So Allah reminds us also in that passage I read to you that difficult times, trials, they mess with your mind, okay? When you're going through difficulty, it messes with your mind. It causes people to start to entertain evil thoughts about Allah. People start to wonder if it's best to join the other side, okay? If you can't beat him, join him, right? So can't beat Shaitan, we'll just join him. Or Shaitan and his forces, okay, wherever they are on this earth. Sometimes that's what happens. We get into the fitna. And so I've had people talk to me and they say, well, maybe the Israelis are right. Maybe we're wrong. I've had Muslims say, why are they shooting rockets to begin with? They shouldn't be shooting rockets. You know, what did they expect was going to happen? So I tell them, okay, so you think that our Muslim brothers and sisters, you're cool with that? You're cool with your aunt or your brother or your mom, you know, living in a prison, being denied food, being denied water, being denied electricity, being denied all their rights, living in a prison, then they should accept that. They should basically bow down, okay, to the oppressor and say, go ahead and put your boot on my neck. That's what it's for. I'm there for you to step on. Is that what they're supposed to do? So they're not allowed to resist. They're not allowed. So every other country in the world is allowed to resist. The United States is built on resistance to the British. So that was wrong. They shouldn't have done that. The United States, the people that came to this country should have kept their heads down. Nobody says that. People are proud of the fact that they resisted. They resisted the oppression. So, and in every movie that you watch, okay, when there is a oppressed people, you're rooting for them. You're saying, I hope that they win. Okay, the rebels need to win. Okay, Star Wars and all that. You want them to win. So why now all of a sudden this is okay? Why now these people shouldn't resist? And that's the thing. Why is this idea coming? Because of the fitna. Because people see this difficulty and they're like, it's hard for them to comprehend it. And so so their mind starts to get messed with, okay? And we start to have evil thoughts about Allah. And we're going to talk about all of these things in detail, how they happened before, so that you can see how this happened even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. We also learned that the wicked will never escape punishment. If you learn nothing, remember that these people, they're not escaping. Remember that Allah really gives everybody their time. On the day of judgment, when we read in Surah Al-Fatiha, Malik Yawm al-Din, what's the benefit of reminding ourselves that Allah owns that day, that He's the king of that day? What's the value of reading that 17 times at minimum a day? What do you guys think? What's the value of that? Think about the world that we live in today, okay? If you are a billionaire, okay, you commit a crime, you kill people, not a person, people, you get off the hook. Hire a bunch of lawyers, they make all these different magic tricks, and all of a sudden you're off the hook and you're walking free the next day, right? People, but if you find a poor person, okay, who hits somebody, he goes to jail for life. Why? Because the other guy, he's got the connections. He knows how to work the system. So on the day of judgment, Allah is telling us what? Your connections are meaningless. Okay? Doesn't matter. You can't come and say, but I'm from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Doesn't matter. What's about your deeds? That's what's going to matter. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, he said, Man batta'a bihi amalu, lam yusra' bihi nasabu. Whoever his actions slowed him down, his lineage is not going to make him go faster. His lineage is not going to benefit him. There is no wasta. There is no none of this like getting off. Okay, there's no tricks that are going to be played on the day of judgment. On that day, and remember, look at the way it's called. He didn't say Malik Yawm al-Qiyamah, Malik Yawm al-Din. This is the day of the repaying of debts. Everybody's going to get what they deserve on that day. That's when the debts are going to be paid. So you went and you you supported the killing of an entire group of people, you got away with it on this earth. Maybe even got praised for it. Maybe even got promoted. Maybe even got a position and money and fame. Okay, as some of the people in Hollywood, you can see that those people who support, okay, a certain group, they get repaid by being given roles and being given television shows and being given popularity because the people that have the ability to give them that as a reward, they get money. There's people, influencers, who show their emails that they're getting on YouTube, and they say, "I'm getting this email that's saying if you portray us in a good light, we'll pay you. We're ready to send you a contract right now if you produce content that is favorable to us, to our image." So you get money, you can get fame, you can get popularity, you might get a government position, you might get status, but on the day of judgment, you're going to pay for that. That's when the debts are going to come due. This is not the place where the debts come due. It's in the hereafter. Okay? And that's why this is so very important to remember that the wicked will never escape punishment. The stories of these people in the Quran bring us lessons to guide us through these dark times. And they are a mercy to us when we are in despair. They are the light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to share with you a story to kind of get us into the right framework, okay? So I want to share with you a story about a hero, okay? The hero stands on the battlefield as soldiers, they run past him in joy over the apparent victory of the army. A moment ago, he was surrounded by so many soldiers, okay? Tens, maybe even a few hundred soldiers. But then, as they all rushed forward to get their spoils, okay? He was now only surrounded by 9 people. 9 soldiers remained around him. When suddenly he realizes the battle is not over. In the distance, he sees a battalion of 150 soldiers coming towards him on their horses. He sees the dust being kicked up in clouds as they are rushing as fast as they can towards him and to the people around him. So he and the 9 people around him, they run for the mountain pass behind. On the way there, one of the enemies starts throwing huge rocks at them, and this hero, one of the rocks hits him directly in the face, and blood is gushing now down his face. As they're going up the mountain to find some security, 7 of the 9 are killed. 7 of the 9 are brought down by archers and so forth. So now he's only having 2 people with him. Of those 2, one of them tries to defend him and loses several fingers on one hand, okay, in the battle, the sword fight that he encounters. So a man loses so many of his fingers. As the enemy draws closer, one of the arrows that is shot hits this hero, and it goes through the armor on the side of his face. It goes through his cheek, and it dislodges one of his teeth in the process. So his blood is coming down his face from the injury from the rock. Now he has a wound, an arrow that's stuck in his face. His companions have been killed, most of them. One of them lost his fingers. And then finally, a third soldier joins them, okay? And that third soldier, he shields the hero with his own body. And his body takes countless arrows. Even one arrow went into his eye, okay? Went through his eye. Finally, the battalion of enemies comes to them, and they start fighting. And one of those enemies, he takes his very, very heavy sword and he brings it down, crashing onto the hero's helmet, causing the helmet, the side part of the helmet, to jam itself, and it lodges itself into his jaw, through the bone and through the muscle into the bone. Okay, that's now that metal is in his body. Subhanallah. So what am I talking about? Anybody know what I'm talking about? This is the Battle of Uhud. And this is exactly what happened to the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Uhud. the greatest of creation, the most beloved of creation to Allah Azza wa Jal, this is what happened to him, and more. The most beloved of his companions were killed on that day. Some of the greatest companions, Sahaba, were killed on the day of Uhud. And look what happened to the Prophet ﷺ. This is not something minor. This is not a paper cut. This is an arrow in his face. This is his helmet being dug into his face that someone had to take it out with their teeth, and they lost their teeth in the process of taking it out. All the injury that he faced, the loss that happened. And so, but isn't he the Prophet? Aren't these the companions? Are they supposed to, like, is this supposed to happen to them? Are they supposed to lose? So this is, despite all of this trauma that's happening, Allah reveals part of the Quran on this battlefield. And the main subject of what I want to talk to you about was revealed, the main ayah. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. This is the main ayah that I want you to not forget. Don't be weak and do not despair, for you will be superior if you are true believers. So, this is coming down in the middle of this battle, okay? The middle of this battle where all this trauma is happening, all of this loss is happening, and Allah is telling them, don't be weak and don't be in despair. Why? The believers at that time, remember, they're just coming off of what? They're coming off of the Battle of Badr, okay? That just happened approximately a year before, less than that, okay? A battle where they went out. What was the goal of Badr? That would they go out to a battlefield? Were they going out to fight or going out for something else? What do you guys think? You guys know? Yusuf, do you know? They didn't go out to fight. They went out to take a caravan. So they were trying to get supplies. They were trying to take. There was a caravan coming back from Syria, and they wanted to basically ambush it and take the supplies from it. That was what their goal was. So they went out, 300 people, 300 companions that were poorly armed. Okay, they did not have professional grade weapons. They went out without armor because this was supposed to be a fast operation. We're going to go, we're going to ambush this caravan, we're going to take the supplies, we're going to go. Okay, quick. But what happened was Abu Sufyan found out that they're going to try to do that. And so he gathered an army to meet them. So these 300 odd Sahaba, they met with 1,000 soldiers from Quraysh. And we're talking about soldiers, they're in their armor, they have professional grade weapons, and they're there to fight. So not what they are meant to encounter, but Allah decreed it to be that way. Allah intended it for that to be that way. The Muslims routed them. They absolutely routed them, despite they had inferior numbers, inferior weapons, inferior preparation. They routed them. Okay? So the believers at that point in time got to the idea that, okay, so we're Muslims, we're believers, the Prophet ﷺ is with us, so we can't lose. Okay? So when Uhud happens, there's this shock. Like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? The Prophet ﷺ is very injured. People are dying. Good people are dying. Extremely good companions are dying. Why is this happening? We are believers. Shouldn't this not happen? So Allah is reminding them, okay, that that's not how it goes, okay? And He reminds us about the importance of morale. When weakness and despair creep into the group, into the army, okay, in this case, then they're going to lose, no matter what, no matter their superior numbers, superior weapons, all that type of stuff. They will lose, okay? They will lose because these things are the killers, despair and weakness. And that's why these things are being addressed to us, that you cannot have these emotions. When we're not on a battlefield, that doesn't matter. Because remember again, when Ramadan begins and you start making that dua has extraordinary power. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ called dua what? Called the weapon of the believer. Okay? You don't need to have a gun. You don't need to have a sword. You don't need to have a bomb. Okay? Your dua is power. It carries enormous power. That's your weapon. But if you are filled with despair and weakness, then your dua is also going to be that way. We need to have strength. So the question then becomes, how do we protect ourselves from that? Okay? How do we protect ourselves from these diseases? Firstly, it's important to remember that it's natural and it's expected to develop these feelings, okay, to feel that you're powerless to do anything. Just like I'm sure I'm talking about what we're all feeling. We all feel powerless. We all wish that we could do something, but we can't, okay? And we get to the point where we feel there is no hope in the situation as we watch the news unfolding every single day, right? So you're sitting on your phone, you're getting all these pictures, all these images on social media, the death, the dying children, the blood on the floors of the emergency rooms, the blood on the streets, the collapsed buildings, the janaza prayers, the multiple janaza prayers, the bodies that you see people, you see 10, 12 bodies in kafan, at a time, people walking in the streets carrying their children in shrouds. Okay, it's very, very easy to become to become hopeless, to be filled with despair. But Allah teaches us in these ayat that are going to follow how to take a different perspective, and that's the perspective that we need. There is a heavenly perspective for these events, just like there was in Uhud. Okay, so the idea is to fill your heart with other emotions, to leave no room for weakness and despair, to leave no room for this defeatist thinking to get a hold of you and to spread its disease. Consider in Surah Al-Baqarah, many of us who read this ayah probably never thought about it. Where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها قال أن يحيي هذه الله بعد موتها. So a man is passing by a town that's fallen into ruin, a city that's fallen into ruin. Okay, so again, probably all of us have done that at some point in time. We've passed by a Greek ruin, a Roman ruin. Okay, we're living in Nevada. There's ghost cities here in Nevada, right? Cities that were once thriving and they're dead. So this man is passing by one of these dead cities and he's saying, how could Allah ever give life to this place after its death, after it came to this ruin? How could it be? So, wait a second. Can't Allah do anything? So, how come he forgot that? What's that? It is human because he's focused on that ruin. He's focused on that destruction. He's focused on the extent of the destruction. So because he's so focused, he says, how could this possibly come back to life? And that's the point, is that as we look at these pictures, as we look at Gaza right now, we see that just absolute destruction that's there. Many of us are thinking the same thing. How is this ever going to come back to life? How are these people ever going to have any semblance of a normal life when this has happened? Because we forgot that Allah Azza wa Jalla is capable over all things. All Allah has to do is say, kun fayakun, be, and it is. Of these townships or these small cities that were ruined, that were utterly brought to waste. Gaza itself, is this the first time Gaza has faced, destruction? No. And they've rebuilt before many times. This is not the first time, okay? And there are other places that have Hiroshima, a very good example, okay? Hiroshima, look at Hiroshima now. You would see that this place was literally hit by a nuclear weapon, okay? And it erased everything. And now you wouldn't be able to tell if you went there. It's a thriving city. So why did he forget that Allah is capable of it? Because he's so focused on that. And when we are so focused on the death and destruction that's there in Gaza, it causes us to feel the same way. Say, there's no hope. It's never going to be okay. We forget that Allah is over all things, and this has already happened multiple times. So this is why Allah commanded those who fight not to neglect the night prayer. Okay, imagine this, that those who used to fight, okay, the mujahideen, they used to fight, okay, long eras ago, okay, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He talked about them in Surah Al-Muzammil, where He says, وَآخَرُونَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَقَرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. Okay? He's saying, and those who go and they fight during the day, they should still recite what's easy for them at night. He's not talking about the Isha prayer. He's talking about the night prayer. Why would they, why this emphasis on the soldier praying the night prayer, which is not a required prayer? Exactly. And exactly. And also to remind themselves of Allah, so they don't get lost in the death and the destruction. Okay, they remember Allah. And when you remember Allah, you remember Allah's words, then that gives you hope. It gives you a different perspective. You start to see things differently. That's the importance of the night prayer, subhanAllah. So we have to remain focused on the Almighty so that we don't get lost in the thoughts of momentary losses. Okay, so continuing then, alhamdulillah. So continuing then, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says in the next ayah, إِن يَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. There's a lot in this ayah, a lot packaged in this statement. If you have suffered an injury, know that your enemy also suffered an injury. You're not the only one. Thus, we alternate the days of victory and defeat among people so that Allah may make known the true believer and take martyrs from among you. And Allah does not like those who do wrong. Allah does not like the oppressor. So let's take that step by step. The first protection for the heart is to remember that just like you've been hurt, they also have been hurt. In any battle, okay? There's losses on both sides. It's not like there's only, like in Gaza right now, that there's only loss on one side, okay? There's different losses on the other side. So we see one of the biggest losses, probably the most valuable loss that they have faced, the oppressors, is what? Any thoughts? Loss of their reputation. And that, for them, is worth thousands of people, okay? It's literally worth thousands of people. At this point in time, the whole world is saying, there's something wrong with you. There's something really, really wrong with you people. Okay? When statistics or the surveys come out and they were asked, do you think that enough force is being used against the people of Gaza? The people of that country, 60%, they said, we believe that not enough force is being used. We believe that you're being too gentle. You need to be more harsh against them. So when the rest of the world sees that, they're like, you people are sick. And that's the general feeling. And the most important group of people in the world today, okay? I'm not talking about a nation. I'm talking about a demographic. What's the most important demographic today? The young people, okay? The young people. And the young people almost unanimously are against them. They are supporting Gaza. They're saying this is not right. There is no justification at all for what's happening right now. And the problem is that old people, they're all brainwashed. It doesn't make a difference. So the young people are the ones who are going to move into power. They're going to move into all elements of power. They're going to move into power in the church. They're going to move into governmental power. They're going to move into business power. And if you've lost this demographic altogether, then it means when the evangelical church, which sends literally hundreds of millions of dollars, okay, to this nation every single year, okay, to basically support the settlers, more also. I don't know why we call them settlers. They're terrorists. That is their name. They are terrorists, okay? Invaders, yeah. Terrorist invaders, that's what they are. But they send them money. The evangelical church of the United States sends them hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But the evangelical youth today are saying, this is not right. And we're not supporting this anymore. That's a big problem because now you're losing hundreds of millions of dollars, okay, that was supporting all of this terrorist activity. We look at governments. Governments are saying, we're not going to give you any more money. We're not going to support this. There's something wrong with you. This is unacceptable. That's a huge loss. So again, don't think only in terms of one thing. Don't say, oh no, there's only, the people are dying and it's, of course, it's horrible. But there is other losses happening. Secondly, Allah reminds us, thus we alternate the days of victory and defeat among people so that Allah may make known the true believer. Okay? That's the first reason. So we have to understand the way that the sunnah of Allah Azza wa Jalla, when it comes to everything, okay, is that He gives you an appointed term. Okay? The human being, you get a period of time. Allah decreed for each and every one of us, you are going to live for a certain period of time. Okay, whatever that is. So a person might say, a certain person might be given 80 years. What if he's really, really bad? Is that going to change the 80 years? No. He's going to get 80 years. Okay? The nation is also given a life. So the Roman Empire was given a life. The Greek Empire was given a life. Okay? The Muslim empires were given a term. Why? Because now you get a chance to prove what you're all about. Okay? Are you really a person who believes in justice and truth, a person who is non-judgmental, unbiased, you believe in international law, all these different things? Okay, prove it. There you go. Powers, you have the floor. You have the power now. What are you going to do with it? Everybody's given that opportunity, all these different nations, because you find some weaker nations, they say, if only we had power, we would do X, Y, and Z. Okay, here's the power. Now, what are you going to do with it? Just like certain people, they said, Allah mentioned this about on an individual level. Some people said, if I had wealth, I would certainly do good things with it. Guess what? You're going to get it. And you're going to be tried. You said you would do this with your money. Now, all of a sudden, when the money comes, you say, well, yeah, I really do want to, support these causes. I mean, they remain important to me, but like I really need to update my house. In fact, I mean, like I think my house is like just too old. I think I just need to build a new house, and I always get guests, and so I need to have a lot of guest rooms, and the kids, boy, they're always complaining about the bathroom. I need 5 bathrooms, and for the cars, I need a 4-car garage, and I've always wanted a Mercedes. So all this, and all of a sudden, it's all about me. It's all about me. I just need to take care of myself now. And then at the end, I'm like, well, I don't have any money left over for those causes I said I was going to support. Allah tries the individual all the way up to the nation. And such are the days. Everybody gets a turn. Okay? Now, we know that the Muslims, again, we know the end of the story. All right? We know how this story ends. Allah already told us. And that should be a relief to everybody. So we know what's going to happen. So let's take this lie at face value really quickly. From the river to the sea. Okay? So they're saying, okay, yes, there are some crazy people out there, okay, that they say, yes, this means that all the people should be killed. Okay? But the general statement, is this what Muslims do? Do they kill people when they invade or they take over a territory? Do they kill everybody that's there? Yes. Exactly. But what do they do with the people that are there? So the Muslims invaded the Roman Empire. Okay. What did they do with the people that were living there? Exactly. That's the concept of jizya. And so the Prophet ﷺ established this, okay, with the people of Najran, of Yemen. Okay, so the Christians of Najran came to meet the Prophet ﷺ. Their story is in the same surah, Surah Al-Imran. And they said, okay, we heard what you have. We don't want to do it. We want to stay Christian. We accept your allegiance, that your government will be over us, but we want to stay Christian. Okay, you have your churches, you have your bishops, continue living your lives. We're not going to, there's no compulsion. There's no compulsion in Islam. So this whole region, okay, what used to be Christian, which is now the southern part of Saudi Arabia, northern part of Yemen, this whole part used to be Christian. Now they're all Muslim. Why? With time. With time, not because of death, not because of killing. Because we know that this Islam is so beautiful that when people live it, they're going to say, well, this is beautiful. This makes good sense. I want to be part of it. They join it. That's what happens. So we look at all of these regions. So we look at Syria, look at Jordan, look at Palestine, look at Lebanon, look at the eastern part of Turkey. All of these places used to be Roman Empire. All of them are Christian. They were not killed. They were not killed and repopulated. They were left to stay on their. That's why you find the oldest churches in the world are there, and they're intact. There's no bullet holes. There's no damage done to them from Muslims. Some other people might have done that, but not the Muslims. So this is the way. So when you look at, so what happens when the Muslims retake this land, when Jerusalem returns to the Muslims? What's going to happen to the people that are there now? Same thing that happened before. So what's interesting, I actually did a study on this. They said the Palestinian people who are there, if you trace them back, you trace their blood, okay, genetically, what are they genetically? Huh? Before even. These are people that they are the descendants of people that were once Jews and once Christians who accepted Islam. They are Semitic people. Okay, the people who are invading, okay, they're not Semitic people. They're not from that. They don't have that same blood. Okay, many of them, vast majority of them, not all of them, of course. So the ones that were there, okay, how come they lived there? How come there's always been some few thousand Jews living in that part of the world when Muslims were controlling it? Because that's not what we're commanded to do. And I'll give you an evidence for that. So what's one of the evidences that we can see in the hadith that when Muslims retake Jerusalem, that the people there will not be killed? Anybody know a hadith on that? So an interesting hadith about Dajjal, okay, a hadith about the Antichrist, that Dajjal, when he comes, comes out, he finally becomes apparent. He's going to come from Isfahan. Okay, Isfahan is currently in the country of Iran. Okay, Iran is generally speaking not very favorable location for Jewish people to live, right? And so right now, if you look it up for yourself, the number of Jews living in Iran today, okay, is about 9,000. 9,000, okay, and that's in all of Iran. Okay, yet the Prophet ﷺ says that when the Dajjal comes, he's going to come out of Isfahan and he's going to be followed by 70,000 Jews. So how did they go from 9,000 in the whole country to 70,000, okay, living in Isfahan? Exactly. When the Muslims take over, okay, take Jerusalem back, take all of that land back, okay, then some of them, they will go elsewhere, meaning they're not killed. Okay, they were not killed. They left and they were allowed to relocate and go other places of their own free will. Now, here's the question. Why would they go to Iran of all places? Why were the Jews living in Medina? Do Jews normally live in the desert? That's not been their normal place of existence typically. They usually have been living in the areas of Sham, okay, which are filled with trees and orchards and fruits and rivers. Why would they go live in the desert? 3 tribes, Bani Qurayza, Bani Nadir, and Bani Qanuqa, all of them, they lived in Medina. What was the purpose of their living in Medina? They were waiting for the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, because they have the prophecy. So they know that the prophet, he's going to come out of this land of the dates. Okay, this land of Medina. So they all moved there, okay, in expectation of the Prophet ﷺ coming. But why didn't they follow him then? They knew he's coming and they saw all the signs. What was the reason they did? Exactly. He said, wait a second. Nobody told us he's going to be an Arab. Okay. This is not what we agreed to here. Okay. No, this is not how things are supposed to go. We moved here hoping that one of our kids would be the prophet. Okay. We were hoping that one of us would get lucky and his son was going to be the prophet. Nobody ever said anything about an Arab being a prophet. No. Okay. Which is base racism. Okay, that's all it is. We're not going to follow an Arab. Absolutely not. Okay, we'll kill him. Okay, but we're not going to follow. It never works out. So look what it is. Zechariah tried to cut his head off, and all these different things. Okay, so but the reason that they went there was because they were in expectation of the prophet. So why are they going to go to Iran? because their books, their prophecy tells them that their Messiah, remember, they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. They say Jesus is false. He's not the Messiah. Why? Because their expectation of a Messiah is a strong man, is a military leader. That's what their expectation is. So when Jesus showed up riding on a donkey and being very meek and gentle and soft, and they said, no, this is not the Messiah. This guy is a weakling. We're not going to follow him. We're waiting for the guy that's going to lead us into victory. That's what we're waiting for. Okay? So their expectation, they know he's going to come. They know that he's coming out of that region. So they go to live there in expectation when he shows up, we're going to be ready to support him. That's the concept. But the idea is there's an evidence in this is that they are not going to be killed. Okay, that this is not the nature. This is not what Islam ever commanded. Islam never commanded the wanton killing of people, so you can take their lands. Okay, what we are about is what the Prophet ﷺ did. Is he said, we want you to worship Allah. And if you're not going to worship Allah, if you're going to stay worshiping what you're worshiping before, at least the land has to be governed according to the rules of Allah. So justice has to be established. Justice will be established. If you want to stay on your religion, that's your choice. And the third point from this ayah, وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ, and so that Allah will take shuhada from you, Allah will take martyrs from you. What we don't realize, and we'll come to this in more detail, is that Allah Azza wa Jal right now, He is in the process of releasing people. So we talk about al-'atq min an-nar in Ramadan, that people being released from the hellfire. There are people right now being released from jail. Okay, they're being taken out of the prison of this earth, and they're being taken directly to the expanse of the hereafter. These are the shuhada, the martyrs. So these poor people that were living in a jail, in an open air prison in Gaza, those who are being killed are being taken to Jannah. What's even more amazing is we see the very high percentage of children. Okay, what is the child going to do on the Day of Judgment when Allah tells him, enter Jannah? He's going to intercede for his parents. He will say, oh Allah, how can I go to Jannah and leave my parents? So literally in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he showed that the child will grab onto the clothing of the parents and say, I can't go without them. And Allah will intercede and say, all of you. How much mercy is in that? But we don't see it that way. We're looking and seeing, all we see is the dying children, but we don't see, okay, what's the bigger perspective? What's the bigger picture here? SubhanAllah. And so Allah Azza wa Jalla is taking martyrs from among them. And lastly, and very importantly, Allah does not like the oppressor. Don't for a minute think that these worldly losses are indicative that Allah prefers them. Okay? That they are chosen, or what all these different weird ideas, okay? That they are better, or that Allah is pleased with their actions. That doesn't mean that. Allah is not ever going to be pleased with the oppression. So then, really quickly, I want to talk about how the Quran deals with painful events, okay? Just as a brief aside. So there are three types of presentation in the Quran when we're talking about painful events. Painful events like what's happening right now in Gaza. So either Allah reports it in detail, the painful event, or He mentions it in summary, or He does not discuss it in any detail at all. So let's look at an example of the first one, okay? Allah describes it in detail. So Surah Al-Buruj, okay? Surah number 85, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. Okay? So Allah swears by four things. And Allah only swears by things that are significant, things that are great, okay? Important. To draw your attention. So Allah is swearing by the stars and the constellations, number one. Number two, the promised day of judgment. Number three, the witness and that which is witnessed. Okay? And why He ends it upon the witness and the witness is because we have to remember that, yes, we are seeing a lot of video of what's happening in Gaza. We are seeing a lot of pictures, but we're not seeing everything. There are so many other forms of harm and oppression and misery and torture that are happening that are never going to be recorded. The names of the people themselves are not being recorded. There are certain people who have lost their entire family, and they said they're too much shocked to go and report. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, He has the record of all of that. Every single drop of blood, Allah has recorded it, and is aware of it. So they will never lose justice for what happened to them. And that's the importance of recognizing that Allah is witness over all of these things. They might try to hide it. Okay, the oppressors may try to hide what they're doing. They may try to, not try, they may lie, as they have done multiple times, about what they're doing. But none of that matters because there is a witness. Allah is the witness to this, and justice will be served to them. So he continues now with the detail. قتل أصحاب الأخدود النار ذات الوقود إذ هم عليها قعود وهم على ما يفعلون بالمؤمنين شهود وما نقموا منهم إلا أن يؤمنوا بالله العزيز الحميد الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض والله على كل شيء شهيد. Another reference. So if you're ignoring the Arabic, you'll see multiple references to witnessing in this surah. Okay, for that reason, to remind you again and again and again, Allah is a witness over this. Allah knows what's happening. Allah will not allow their reward or their punishment to be lost. They cannot hide from that. So what is the detail then that's being mentioned here? Allah says, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, condemned are the diggers of the trench, the fire pit filled with fuel. This is a reference to something which happened in the early years. It's some people say it is the Prophet Daniel alayhi salam. It was in his era that what happened was there was a boy that was killed by one of the kings, and the people believed in Allah as a result of the actions of this young man, this adolescent, and as a result, the king wanted to rid the entire country of those people that believed in Allah. And so he commanded his soldiers to dig trenches, and he filled them with fuel. They lit it on fire, and then they used to take the believers and they used to push them into that fire and burn them alive. So Allah says, as they sat beside it as witnesses to what they were doing against the believers. So they watched the people burn, and in fact, in the tafsir, it talks about how they ridiculed them. Sounds familiar? Sounds very familiar, right? Like people taking stuffed animals and lying in a crib to take a funny picture, or people dancing around with lingerie of dead people. Okay, that's happening now. So this concept of ridiculing the dead, this is what they were doing as well. Allah is a witness to that. Allah saw what they were doing to the believers, and they only killed them for one reason, is that they believed in Allah, okay, Al-Aziz al-Hamid. Allah, the Almighty, the Praiseworthy, the one to whom belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is a witness over all things. So Allah condemns them, okay? Allah condemns them in their behavior, okay? And He tells us what they did. And He gives a very detailed description of this painful event. So you might be saying, well, then how can I avoid falling into despair thinking about something like this? Go back to the names of Allah that He's mentioned. What are the attributes of Allah that He's mentioned here? That He's mentioned that Allah is Almighty. How does Allah being Almighty matter in a situation like this? There will be justice in the end. Don't think that Allah is incapable. Okay? That's where we disbelieve. If we say that Allah couldn't solve this problem, He couldn't protect these people, then now you've entered into kufr. Now you're losing track of what you're supposed to do. Okay? Allah is Almighty. He's allowing this to happen because there is a reason for it. There is a wisdom in that. It is not because He is unable to stop it. Allah is Almighty. Allah is praiseworthy. So when we say Alhamdulillah, we're praising Allah. And again, what we don't realize is that there's so much happening right now in Gaza that is filled with the praise of Allah Azza wa Jal. The mercy of Allah is operating on levels that we cannot comprehend, but you will comprehend it on the hereafter. So the Shehata being released, those who are being injured, those who are faced with loss and trial and difficulty. Do you know that on the Day of Judgment, in the Sahih Hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, on the Day of Judgment, those who suffered in this life, Allah will draw them out in front of the creation. So imagine right now that you are at your school, okay, at UNLV, and you're in the graduation, and the dean, selects you to come out in front of everybody else to honor you. What an honor that is, that you are honored in front of the whole class, in front of the whole school, okay, which is only a few thousand people in that case, the graduating class, okay? But what about on the day of judgment when you are honored in front of all of the creation? To the point that the people who see this honor, they will say, oh Allah, please send us back to the dunya and allow us to suffer and be tortured and be miserable like them so that we can get that honor as well. We want that same honor. We don't see that mercy right now, but you see it in the hereafter. You say, ah, now I understand. They went through all of this and they were patient with it. Now look at the honor that they get. We don't know that. We don't see it. And so it's hard for us for that reason. Allah is the owner of the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and He is a witness over everything. So when you know that Allah owns the earth and He chooses who He gives it to, then we say, I believe in Allah and I've put my trust in Allah. What Allah is doing, I don't understand it. I don't need to understand it because I know that Allah does things out of wisdom. So that helps us to understand. The second manner of discussing painful events in the Quran is to mention it in summary. So we have in Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah Al-A'raf, I'm sorry, وَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ مِنْ قَوْمِ فِرْعَوْنَ أَتَذَرُ مُوسَى وَقَوْمَهُ لِيُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ ويذرك وآلهتك قال سنقتل أبناءهم ونستحيي نساءهم وإنا فوقهم قاهرون. So he says that the eminent, the high status, quote unquote, the rich people among the people of Fir'aun, they said, will you leave Musa and his people to cause corruption in the land? Are you going to leave these people to these terrorists? Sounds familiar? Okay, so either you're with us or you're a terrorist. There's no third way. So it puts people in a tough situation. That's what the people of Musa or the people of Fir'aun are saying. These people are terrorists. You're going to let them run around and cause all this corruption? That's what you're going to do? So what did he say? We will kill their kids. سَنُقَتِّلُ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ. Sounds familiar? Again, this is all repeated history. None of this is new. Okay? The only thing that should be, a comment is that, hey, this happened to you. Why are you doing it to somebody else? Right? This is your history. Why would you turn around and do it to somebody else? وَإِنَّا فَوْقَهُمْ قَاهِرُونَ, and we will completely dominate them. Very exact, like what the comments coming out of that oppressive land. Okay, this is the same comments. Okay, and we see that the proportion of children who have been killed in this slaughter, okay, are approximately 50%. This is not an expected statistic. Okay, you would not expect it. That's not the statistic in any of the world wars that children were killed to this or died in these numbers. Okay, something's going on here. So what did Musa alayhi salam reply? So we don't get into the detail. We get a summary, okay? He said, we're going to kill their kids, we're going to dominate them. How? The detail is not mentioned. The important thing is what Musa alayhi salam said. قال موسى لقومه أستعين بالله واصبروا إن الأرض لله يورثها من يشاء من عباده والعاقبة للمتقين. So what did he tell them? Seek Allah's help and be patient. That's what he told Bani Israel. Sometimes that is the answer. Be patient and ask the help of Allah. Allah, to Him belongs the whole of the earth, and He grants it to whoever He wills, again, for a time. He gives it to them for a time to see what they will do with it. But the ultimate outcome, the final outcome, belongs to the righteous. This we will never forget. Okay, remember, this life is a life of trial. This is a life of testing. Okay, the real success is on the Day of Judgment. And that is where the righteous will get their reward, not now. Okay? The weakness of his people, of course, unfortunately broke through. Okay? And so the final example is in Surah Yasin, okay, where Allah doesn't discuss the punishment in any detail, doesn't discuss the misery in any detail at all. So in Surah Yasin, where it says, إِنِّي آمَنْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ فَاسْمَعُونَ قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةَ قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ. Okay, so what happened here? Two messengers, they came to a people, a community, and they started calling them to the worship of Allah. the people were rejecting them, and Allah sent a third one to join them. And He's telling His people, Inni amantu bi rabbikum fasma'un, listen to me, I am believing in this message. Okay? He's saying that the next part of the ayah, same ayah. Okay? قِيلَ ادْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. The angels, they said to him, enter Jannah. And he's saying, I wish my people, they know what Allah has forgiven of me, my sins, what Allah forgave of my sins. So what happened? He's saying, hey people, listen to me. Suddenly the angels are saying to him, enter Jannah. What happened in between? Allah didn't discuss it. But when you look at the tafsir, what you find is that this man was abused severely. Severely. His people, they took him, they beat him, they tortured him, they cut him open, they took out his intestines, and so on and so on and so on until he died. He went through a lot of torture until he died. So why did Allah skip over that? Why did He not tell us? When in other parts of the Quran He tells us. Because he is a shaheed. And the shuhada, they don't feel it. They don't feel it like what you and I feel. They don't feel that pain because Allah Azza wa Jal is taking them to Jannah. So this pain that they go through is momentary. It's not worth even mentioning because they go directly to their reward. And so these are some of the ways that Allah deals with things. Now back to Al Imran, okay? We'll continue with Ayah 141. Why does Allah allow this to happen? وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَمْحَقَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah will purify the believers through these trials and destroy the disbeliever. So this word مَحَّصَ وَلِيُمَحِّصَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. مَحَّصَ is used for the purification of gold. So when they purify gold in the forge, what are they doing? They're turning up the heat, okay, until you melt off the impurity from the gold. Okay, so the impurity is melted and it becomes taken off. And then finally at the end, you have the product, which is pure gold. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He puts us through these trials and it's the same concept. He's turning up the heat, turn up the heat, turn up the heat. Who remains? The ones that remain, pure gold. And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, النَّاسُ مَعَادٍ كَمَعَادٍ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ. That people are like metals. Some of them are like gold and silver. Some of them aren't. So you ask yourself, what am I? When the heat gets turned up, do I start having evil ideas about Allah? Do I start looking for the exit? Do I start saying, maybe this isn't the right road? Maybe I made a bad choice. Or are you saying, I know this is right, and I'm going to be patient with the trial of Allah. And how does He destroy the believers? We're going to talk about that in a moment, okay? And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He also says, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنكُمْ وَيَعْلَمَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Do you think that Jannah is so cheap that you say, I believe, and that's it, you get it? No trials, no difficulties, no problems? That's not how it works. When you look at the history of the people before, you see that they went through so much trial, so much misery, so much difficulties. They lost so much, but that didn't divert them from their faith. It didn't cause them to lose their patience. So we see this, what's happening, despite the slow death that the people of Gaza are going through, it didn't change their faith. We still see them. We still see all these images of people praying in ruins. People who are being asked, what do you say about all this? And they say, Alhamdulillah. And now a really interesting lesson. You always want to see, why does Allah put these ayat in the locations He places them? وما محمد إلا رسول قد خلت من قبله الرسل أفإن مات أو قتل انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه فلن يضر الله شيئا وسيجزي الله الشاكرين. So in this whole discussion about all this difficulty in Uhud, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says Muhammad is only a messenger. Other messengers have gone before him. If he were to die or to be killed, would you then turn back to disbelief? So whoever turns back to disbelief is not going to harm Allah in any way, and Allah will reward the grateful. So when we look at this in detail in the Battle of Uhud itself, then we start to, so when we take the history, it helps us to understand this ayah in greater detail. When we look at the death of Mus'ab ibn Umayr, Mus'ab ibn Umayr is one of the best Sahaba, one of the elites among the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala. He was killed on the day of Uhud. He was one of the Shuhada. Mus'ab ibn Umair, he looked like the Prophet ﷺ. Same skin tone, same facial features. Even he was wearing a cloak on the day of Uhud that the Prophet ﷺ had given to him. So when Abdullah ibn Qami'ah, when he killed Mus'ab ibn Umair, he thought he actually killed the Prophet ﷺ. And then, so he started screaming, "Qataltu Muhammad, Qataltu Muhammad. I have killed Muhammad." And he started shouting this to everybody. Okay? And so what happened after that? Some of the Sahaba, they just stopped. They were in shock. Rasulullah is dead. What now? They put their sword down, they sat down. They didn't know what to do, they're in shock. So Anas ibn al-Nadr, okay, the companion, he's the uncle of Anas ibn Malik. He comes, he's like, "What are you people doing?" And they said, "Didn't you hear the Prophet ﷺ is dead?" He said, "So what? He died, we're going to die on the same thing that he died upon. What difference does it make? He died, but we're going to die on the same." And subhanAllah, with this beautiful hadith of in Sahih al-Bukhari, where Anas ibn Malik, he narrates about his uncle, and he said, "My uncle Anas ibn Nadr, he was absent from Badr." And so he said to the Prophet ﷺ, "I was absent from the first battle you fought against the mushrikeen, and if Allah allows me to participate in another battle against the pagans, Allah will see what I will do. I will show Allah what I'm made of." This is the words of a man. We talk about that, guys, right? We talk about difference between male and man. This is the man. Okay, this is the man. He says, "I will show. I'm going to make up for that I wasn't that better. I will show. I'm going to be the top." Okay. So when he saw the Sahaba sitting down, okay, he said to Allah Azza wa Jal, he started saying, "Oh Allah, I seek your forgiveness for what my companions have done, that they just kind of gave up. And I tell you that I'm innocent of what these mushrikeen are doing." And so he said, "I'm going to go into the battle. I'm going to go into the midst of the mushrikeen. I'm going to fight." On the way there, he came across Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, he doesn't need an introduction. He's one of the great Ansar and one of the real tough guys, mashallah. So he said, فقال يا سعد بن معاذ الجنة ورب النضر إني أجد ريحها من دون أحد. قال سعد فما استطعت يا رسول الله ما صنع. So he came across Sa'd ibn Mu'adh and he said, "Oh Sa'd, I smell the fragrance of Jannah behind Uhud. I can smell it." And Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, being the tough man that he is, he said, "Ya Rasulullah, I couldn't do what he did that day. He did something I could not, I'm not capable of achieving what he did." Because he went into the battle, and when they found him, this body after the battle of Uhud, he had 80 wounds on his body, 80 wounds on his body between the cuts of a sword, the piercing of the arrow, and the holes, the puncture wounds of the spears, to the extent that they mutilated him. They wanted to punish him so bad, the mushrikeen, they kept mutilating him after he was dead. Only his sister, she was able to recognize him by his fingerprints, by his fingertips. And so Anas ibn Malik, he said, كنا نرى أو نظن أن هذه الآية نزلت فيه وفي أشباهه من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه. So he said, we were certain, as the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that this ayah was revealed in regards to him and people like him. When Allah Azza wa Jal, he said, among the believers are men who have been true to their covenant with Allah. They made the promise and they kept the promise. So Anas, what was his promise? He said, if Allah allows me to see the mushrikeen in battle, Allah will see what I'm made of on that day. And he showed what he was made of on that day. So, with regard to that, we see here the understanding that Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger. Other messengers have passed away before him. They've died. So if he's going to die or be killed, are you going to turn back to disbelief? What are we about? Just like Anas ibn Nadr, he said to the companion, he said, Muhammad has been killed, but the Lord of Muhammad has not been killed. Allah is alive. What Abu Bakr said, Muhammad ﷺ has died, but Allah is living, never to die. Allah hayyun la yamut. So that's the idea. What are you doing? What are we all about? And so And the same ayah that comes after, وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن نَبِيٍّ قَاتَلَ مَعَهُ رِبِّيُّونَ كَثِيرٌ فَمَا وَهَنُوا لِمَا أَصَابَهُم في سبيل الله وما ضعفوا وما استكانوا والله يحب الصابرين. How many a prophet fought in battle along with many religious people, righteous people, but they never lost certainty due to what afflicted them in the cause of Allah. They never got weak and they never submitted. And Allah loves the patience. Okay? So, and then there's another recitation of this. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن نَبِيٍّ قُتِلَ مَعَهُ رِبِّيُّونَ كَثِيرٌ. And how many a prophet was killed along with many righteous people that were with him. But that didn't change anything. The people who were fighting didn't change their motivation. So right now, how are we going to apply this to Gaza? Okay, what are we going to say about that? We're going to say that it doesn't mean that if there is a loss there, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change our deen. It doesn't change our relationship with Allah. It doesn't change our belief at all. It has nothing to do with it. Because there's going to be losses and there's going to be victories. A loss doesn't mean we abandon Islam. We're not only worshiping Allah when good things happen and when difficulty happens, we run away. No, that's not how it works. We have been committed to the ideal. That ideal is going to succeed on certain days and it's not going to succeed on others. The followers of that ideal. And this is the trial. So what's happening there has no effect on our iman. It should have zero effect on our iman. That's the very important thing to learn here. Learn from Anas ibn al-Nadr that even the Prophet ﷺ, he died thinking the Prophet ﷺ was dead. He died thinking that's it. The mission of the Prophet ﷺ is over. I'm going to die on the same thing. Recognize that there were people that died before him. They never saw victory. People died in Mecca. Sumayyah, that was killed in Mecca, she never saw victory. She died because she said, this is the truth. And it doesn't make a difference if I see victory or I don't see victory. We know victory is going to come. Does it matter that I have to see it? Is it a requirement that I have to see the victory? No. Okay? So if I die and I never see what Allah promised, it doesn't change anything. Doesn't change that it's the truth. And so I know it's time to pray, and I will almost finish, inshallah, if we can wait just a couple of minutes. But if people are in a rush, I will stop and we will complete after the salah, as you wish. I didn't call the adhan. If you want to, we can call the adhan if you'd like. I'll be happy to do it, inshallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. Inshallah, we only have about 15 minutes, inshallah, and I'll be done. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He said after that, ثم أنزل عليكم من بعد الغم أمنة نعاسا يغشى طائفة منكم وطائفة قد أهمتهم أنفسهم يظنون بالله غير الحق ظن الجاهلية يقولون هل لنا من الأمر من شيء قل إن الأمر كله لله يخفون في أنفسهم ما لا يبدون لك يقولون لو كان لنا من الأمر شيء ما قتلنا هنا قل لو كنتم في بيوتكم لبرز الذين كتب عليهم القتل إلى مضاجعهم وليبتلي الله ما في صدوركم وَلِيُمَحِّصَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us in this ayah, ayah 154, after distress, He sent down upon you security in the form of drowsiness, overcoming a faction of you, while another faction worried about themselves, thinking of Allah other than the truth, the ideas of ignorance, saying, is there any decision for us in this matter? Say, indeed, the matter belongs entirely to Allah Azza wa Jalla. So, the benefit that we're going to take from this beautiful ayah is what comes later. وَلِلَّهِ وَاللَّهُ يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ. Death does not come because of a bomb or a sword or a gun or poison or whatnot. Death comes because Allah has decreed it. Okay, so we know in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that when the child is in the womb of the mother, among the things that are decreed at that point in time is the lifespan. The lifespan is decreed, right? So that means that these people who are dying right now, Allah has already decreed their death. If they didn't die this way, they'll die another. You can never escape death. And so Allah is telling these people here that it doesn't matter where you run, where you go, when the decree of death comes, you will die. And that is why later they said, الَّذِينَ قَالُوا لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ وَقَعَدُوا لَوْ أَطَاعُونَ مَا قُتِلُوا قُلْ فَادْرَءُوا عَنْ أَنفُسِكُمُ الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. So the people who said, our brothers died because they went into this situation. So Allah is saying, okay, if you think that you can protect yourself from death, do it. Stop death from coming to you. Can you? You cannot. So the death that's happening there, again, from a perspective, we have to realize that this is their ajal. This is the time that was given to them. These children, that was the time that was given to them. Again, if we don't believe that, then there is a problem in our aqeedah. If we start to say, well, these people, they took their life early, then we have a problem with the belief. And then we start to say that these people overpowering Allah. Can anyone do that? Can anyone do something outside of the command of Allah? Absolutely. And that's the benefit that we take from this, again, as a perspective that we say, yes, it is very, very sad what's happening there, but that doesn't change. Again, this is the decree of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And similar ayat which he mentioned in 157 and 158, وَلَئِن قُتِلْتُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَوْ مُتْتُمْ لَمَغْفِرَةٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَحْمَةٌ خَيْرٌ مِّمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. If you are martyred, or you just die in your bed, then His forgiveness and mercy are far better than what those who stay behind will accumulate. So those that they went out, and these people are being killed in Gaza, okay? They are dying, but they're getting the reward. The reward of standing up for the truth, standing up for their freedom, standing up against the oppressor. And so, though their lives were cut short, that which they gain in reward is far better than anything the people who live after them will accumulate. The people who are killing them, even though some of them may have a long life, they're never going to accumulate the reward that these people have accumulated in their dying. And Allah follows that by saying what? وَلَئِن مُتُّمْ أَوْ قُتِلْتُمْ لَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُحْشَرُونَ. If you are killed in battle or you die in your bed, at the end of the day, where are we going? All of us are going to the same place. We're all going to stand in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment. So again, this concept of death, don't be so focused on it. Don't let it override you entirely. We are all going to the same place. So these people that died in Gaza, as tragic and as, believe me, very sad as it is, they are still going to the same place that you and I are going to. We're not going to go a different place. We're all going to stand before Allah Azza wa Jalla and be judged. So lastly, to remind us about the Shehata. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He finishes this discussion of Uhud talking about the Shehata. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. And never think of those who have been killed in the cause of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, well provided for. So we are saddened when we see these images of death. But again, take a different perspective. Instead of taking the human perspective that we have, looking at our social media, looking at the news, take the perspective from higher. That these are people that Allah Azza wa Jalla has selected as shuhada. selected them. Is Shahada something worthy of longing for? Something we should try to have? Umar ibn Khattab, he used to make dua. He said, "Oh Allah, allow me to have the death of a shaheed." So the people, they laughed at him and they said, "Umar, you're Amir al-Mu'mineen. You live in the middle of the Muslim world. How are you going to die as a shaheed? You are a leader. You're in Medina. Okay, the shuhada, they're dying on the front lines. Okay, far away. But Allah gave it to him. Allah gave him the death of shahada. So, because it's something worthy. Why? Because of the enormous reward that comes with it. So when we consider, okay, that these people are alive being provided for by Allah Azza wa Jal, we cry over them, but they're in better condition than we are. They're in absolute happiness. They're never going to have need ever again. But our situation, I can't say anything about myself. I don't know what my situation is going to be. Who can tell me now that he will die as a Muslim? Who among you can say, I know I will die as a Muslim? You don't know. In fact, we are living in a time right now when the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the person يُصْبِحُ مُؤْمِنًا وَيُمْسِي كَافِرًا, that he will wake up as a believer and die as a disbeliever. And the person will wake up as a disbeliever and die as a believer. Yesterday, I was at the masjid, 4 people accepted Islam. 4 people in the space of 1 hour. 4 people accepted Islam. These are people who, the day before, they were not Muslim. Wa alaikum salam. So we're living in a time with these trials. Again, people get lost in the trial, get lost in the despair, and they lose their faith. So who can guarantee then that he's going to die upon Iman? But these people, they didn't die just on Iman. They died facing off for the sake of their deen, getting Shahada. And so they are succeeding, whereas our situation is in doubt. Allah continues by saying, فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. They are so happy with what Allah has given them of His blessings. They're happy. Why are you sad? Perspective. We're sitting and crying over them, but they're happy. They're happy with what Allah is giving them. They're in the ultimate state of happiness. وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ أَلَّا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. What's the one thing that the dead person always worries about? They worry about the family. What's going to happen to my family? So Allah Azza wa Jal, again, nothing is left out. Nothing is forgotten. They receive the good tidings about those to be martyred after them who have not yet joined them. So the dead person comes and he says, but what about my family? Inshallah, they're coming very soon. They will be following you. And you will all be together. SubhanAllah. What a mercy from Allah Azza wa Jal. What a ni'mah. If that was the only ni'mah, it would be enough. That you say, Alhamdulillah, I will be together with the people that I love. And this is what Allah is giving them. He gave them everything, all the reward, all the blessing, all of the provision, all of the happiness, to include your family will be with you soon. Don't be afraid about them and don't grieve, because they're coming to you. SubhanAllah. So in summary then, we want to think, so a lot of times the people that say, but what about these oppressors? What about what they're doing? What about all this corruption, this lying, this destruction that they're doing, this wanton slaughter, the killing, all of this horrible things that they're doing? What about them? Okay? We want to see that, right? A person wants to see, we want to see justice being delivered. But what I always remind you is the justice for these types of actions, do you think it can be applied in this life? Do you think the people that do these evil things, the people that ridicule the dead and play with the toys of the dead children that they just killed, okay? The people that lie and they say these are not human beings and they're cockroaches and they should all be killed. Is there really a punishment on this earth that is going to be just? No. The punishment is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So don't worry about, okay, they went to prison, leave it with Allah Azza wa Jal, because the only one that can deliver what they really deserve is Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah tells us, وَلَا يُحْزِنْكَ الَّذِينَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْكُفْرِ إِنَّهُمْ لَن يَضُرُّوا اللَّهَ شَيْئًا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَلَّا يَجْعَلَ لَهُمْ حَظًّا فِي الْآخِرَةِ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. So he tells the Prophet ﷺ, don't grieve about those who rush into disbelief. They will definitely not harm Allah in any way. It is Allah's will to not give them a share in the hereafter. Allah's desire not to give them anything good in the hereafter, except that they will get their punishments. So as a result, the last ayah, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ لِأَنفُسِهِمْ إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He's telling us, and those who disbelieve should not think that because we extend their time of enjoyment in this life, that is good for them. وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ خَيْرٌ لِأَنفُسِهِمْ. The fact that their life has been extended, that they have some time, that's not good. Okay? Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي لَهُمْ لِيَزْدَادُوا إِثْمًا. We only extend their life so they increase in sin. So they have more sin. Oh, we'll pray in just 1 minute, inshallah. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is giving them more time. Why? Not because He loves them, not because He's pleased with them, not because they're doing something good. He's giving them more time so that they can get more sin. So on the day of judgment, Allah will punish them for all of that sin. They're not getting anything here. Remember that when you get a thorn cuts you, or some harm comes to you in this life, that is something that diminishes your punishment in the hereafter. Allah, out of His mercy, He puts us through these trials so that we don't suffer on the day of judgment, the real suffering. But with the kuffar, with these people, these oppressive people, He says, no, enjoy your life. You want some food? Have the best food. You want nice things? Have all the nice things. Take all the luxury of this dunya, which we already said is what? Base and low, insignificant. You want to take it. Take as much of it as you want. Okay, enjoy your life. So that way, your punishment will all be delivered on the day of judgment. And only an idiot would accept that offer. So we say, oh Allah, we want to be safe on the day of judgment. Nas'al Allah al-afiyah. So when we see this situation, when you see them, لا يغرنك تقلب الذين كفروا في البلاد. Don't be upset. Don't be misled by seeing these disbelievers going around in their fancy, with their fancy lives and their luxuries. Don't be misled by that. Don't think for a moment that Allah loves them. That's why He gave it to them. You got to look at the big picture that Allah is giving that to them, giving them all that time, all that opportunity to maximize their sin. And in the end, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. For them, there is a severe punishment, a humiliating punishment at the end. So, to end, inshallah, what are the summary points I want to leave you with, inshallah? Number one, don't allow yourself to fall into weakness or despair. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. As we started. Don't fall into weakness and don't fall into despair by making sure to fill your heart with the remembrance of Allah's words and His promise. Again, I heard this from so many ulama. They said, we know how this story ends. We know how this is going to end. Why are you worried? Don't be worried. Okay, yes, it's not pleasant what's happening. But again, recognize these people Allah is taking them as shuhada. Allah is giving them trials that He's going to reward them for with an honor that you can't imagine on the day of judgment. They're going to get honors on the day of judgment that you can't imagine. And you know how the story ends. These people are not going to win. They're not going to be there for long. So don't worry about it. Don't allow despair to creep into your heart. You know the end of the story. Don't get lost in the details. Just like when you're reading a novel. You ever read this difficult time, you're like, I wonder if he's going to make it. So you just skip to the end, and you're like, you see the last line, and the hero walks off into the sunset or whatever. And so, okay, he lives. Okay, I'm relieved now. I can read the rest of these pages. Okay, because now you know. Okay, so are you know the end of the story? We know the end of the story. Allah Azza wa Jal and the believers will succeed. These oppressive people now who are there, it's only a short period of time. Allah gave them a certain time, and the time is almost up. When's it exactly going to end? I don't know. You don't know, and I don't know, and nobody else knows. Allah knows. But their time is almost up. Okay? That is a fact. Don't worry about it. Don't let yourself get plunged into despair and lose your faith in the process when you know the truth. Stop wasting your time with mainstream news. We've already learned that the mainstream news is filled with nothing but lies. If you didn't learn that, that's one of the greatest victories of the people of Gaza, is that we learned that the news is nothing but lies. Okay? That they twist and they turn and they spin everything in order to get a certain result, to get your opinion to go to a certain place. That's it. Why are we going to listen to them? If you know someone is a liar, he's standing in front of you, are you going to give him any attention and you give him any time of day? So why are we listening to these people? Stop wasting your time. We don't read Quran. We don't remember Allah. And we spend an hour or two listening to this garbage. Stop. Number 3, don't lose yourself in social media feeds or news. Keep a balance. Okay, yes, you want to see what's happening? You're going to go through some of your social media. Okay, balance that with remembering Allah. Balance that with recitation of the Quran. Don't allow your heart to become immersed in this despair and then get lost. And lastly, remember that history repeats itself. And the history that Allah has chosen to report in the Quran is a history that contains lessons for all time. Don't be ignorant of that. Allah has given us this book. He's given us these stories to give us hope, to give us reassurance, to make sure that we don't get lost in the details and we lose our faith in the process. We're about to enter into Ramadan. You're going to have an opportunity to hear the whole of the Quran at least. Spend some time, reflect on these stories, reflect on the lessons that are found in the stories of the Quran. And most importantly, as I said, inshallah, I hope that I've met my objective, that the despair has gone, inshallah, from your hearts. Now what we have to do is we have work to do in Ramadan. We have work to make dua for these people. These people, they deserve our dua. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla, inshallah, to give them victory, to help them stay strong, to help them be united with their families, to remove their distress, and to remove the oppression of the oppressors permanently. We have to make this dua. So keep on, in any way that you make it, in any form, shape or form that you want, make your heart connected with our brothers and sisters, inshallah, wherever they may be, in lands of oppression and lands of distress. But don't forget them in your dua in Ramadan. Your dua has power. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. And inshallah, we'll pray now. Thank you for those online. I hope inshallah that you guys got some benefit out of it. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.